So I found an interesting cult called the Children of God. It's pretty messed up. Sometimes these cults go way over the top in how crooked and crazy they are. And a while back I decided I wasn't going to shy away from sensitive subjects for the sake of monetization, which is why my Westboro Baptist Church video got permanently demonetized. However, I do have young family members that watch my channel sometimes, so I can't go all out on this. You'll see exactly why soon. First, I'll cover the church's history. Then I'll address their core tenets, the leadership, and finally I'll cover what they call the law of love. Let's get into it. So what is the Children of God? They were founded by a man named David Berg in Huntington Beach, California in 1968 under the name Teens for Christ. When it started out, it was filled with teenagers and hippies. Later on, it drew in a more diverse crowd. By 1972, they had 130 communities all over the world. And in 1978, David Berg disbanded it and created the new organization called the Family of Love. Basically the same organization, same rules, same leadership. Different name. It was an attempt to throw off the allegations of sexual assault. While they went by the name Family of Love between 1978 and 1982, the members were encouraged to do what they called flirty fishing, where they would spread the love of God by sleeping with random people and then trying to bring them into the church. Imagine that. According to them, they actually claimed over 100,000 converts with that method. I have my doubts, and I'll talk about their statistics in a little bit. For now, let's continue with their history. So in the 90s, the police started getting heavily involved in what was going on. There were a number of raids on their communities, and in 1994 and 95, a court case in Britain determined that it was, in fact, safe for children to live with the family as long as they denounced anything David Berg said about child abuse, which included promises to stop corporal punishment. In 2005, during the family era, a spokesman had this to say: "Due to the fact that our current zero-tolerance policy regarding sexual interaction between adults and underage minors was not in our literature published before 1986, we came to the realization that during a transitional stage of our movement, from 1978 to 1986, there were cases when some minors were subject to sexually inappropriate advances. This was corrected officially in 1986, when any contact between an adult and a minor, any person under the age of 21, was declared an excommunicable offense." Of course, I happen to know personally that child abuse is still deeply ingrained in their society. Even if they came out and said that one statement 30 years ago, members still believe that it's part of worshiping God, which makes it both a sex cult and a child abuse cult. In case I haven't communicated it clearly enough yet, for the majority of their history, they've openly believed that sexually abusing children was part of worshiping God. Now they're just less public about it. Now let's talk about their core tenets. Their doctrine speaks out against men being gay, but it's pretty accepting of gay women. They believe in the Trinity, and they think the Holy Spirit is the female maternal influence. There are a number of spirits, not just angels, but believers who've died too. The Archangel Gabriel actually had physical sex with Mary to conceive Jesus, which means she wasn't a virgin. Well, you know what they say. What's more likely, that the entire natural order is suspended, or that a teenager would tell a lie? Anyways, they also think that Satan was one of God's best angels, and when he rebelled, he took a number of other angels with him, who became demons, which is pretty close to what Jehovah's Witnesses believe. So they're on par with Jehovah's Witnesses on that front. They think there's a constant war in the spirit realm, and humans play an active role in the war through prayer. Just wait until you find out how and what they do while they pray. It only gets better from here. As far as Armageddon goes, they think it's immediately impending, and that belief colors almost all of their long-term decisions, which is a deep problem within Christianity in general, in my opinion. They think natural disasters are one of the key signs that the end is near, and the one world government is on its way as we speak. They also have some weird, twisted-up end-time predictions, which is a hallmark of extremist religions. The predictions they had in the 90s were linked to David Berg and some of the other members at the time, but Berg ended up dying in 1994, so obviously that eventually fell flat. They believe that heaven is in a pyramid in the moon. Its dimensions are 1,500 by 1,500 by 1,500 miles. They also believe that scientists have measured the moon inaccurately. David Berg's vision of heaven apparently included several naked women surrounding Jesus. Now about their leadership. As I mentioned earlier, the founder and leader was David Berg. This is what he looked like. Total creeposaurus. There's nothing good about this guy's face. Imagine him starting a sex cult. He felt like mainstream Christians failed to follow Jesus, as most cult leaders do. Both of his parents were evangelical pastors. As I said a few minutes ago, he died in October of 1994. The current leader is Karen Zerby. She joined the church in 1969, and she was married to Berg up until his death. When he died, she took over and married one of Berg's personal assistants, Steve Kelly. Apparently, Steve Kelly was picked by Berg as his wife's consort, oddly enough. And now Steve Kelly is kind of the public face of the church. Karen now calls herself the Queen and the Prophetess, and she's also called Maria, Mama Maria, Queen Maria, and a number of other variations. An extremely strange group of people with extremely strange relationships. Okay, so that's their history, their core tenets, their beliefs, and their leadership. With all of that out of the way, let's talk about the really crazy stuff. The law of love. It's kind of a central doctrine of theirs. Here's the bottom line. Anything done in love is okay by God. The law of love supersedes all other laws in the Bible and should be followed even if it contradicts the laws of man. So if you murder somebody because you love somebody else, it's okay in God's eyes. Here's a quote from their official website. Why we do it. Love is God's solution to the problems the world faces. Even in the complex and challenging world we live in today, love put into action is the greatest service to humankind. Presumably, when they say love put into action, they mean something very specific. F***ing. They mean f***ing, in case you didn't catch that. Marriages seem to be monogamous with the group, but swinging is heavily encouraged, and members are told they're part of one wife of Jesus, and should be freed from jealousy and experience the joy of sharing their partners. I know I have polygamous viewers, but I could not do it. I have no problem with you doing it, but I couldn't get past the jealousy. Seriously, I am too jealous. I'm too exclusive. Maybe it's the result of the culture I grew up in, but I couldn't do polygamy myself. Anyways, being Jesus' wife is heavily emphasized for everybody. Men and women. They're told to respond to Jesus as an eager wife would, and to engage in sexual activity during prayer, since Jesus wants spiritual sex with each of his true followers. I told you guys it was about to get f***ing crazy up in here. Basically, when you do anything with anybody, you're supposed to imagine that you're doing it with Jesus. You're also supposed to be immersed in prayer the whole time. And during that prayer, there are some phrases that Jesus likes to hear you say. In fact, interestingly enough, they're the exact same phrases that David Berg liked to hear. So, quite the coincidence there. I'm not going to say them here because they're a little too NSFW, but if you want, you can come to my Discord and go to the NSFW channel, as long as you're over 18, and you can read all about the phrases you're supposed to say to Jesus. Okay, thank that part's over. Back to the normal, destructive cult-like beliefs. They're also supposed to express their special love for Jesus through graphic poetry, art, and songs. Jesus likes to hear people talk dirty to him. Some marriages are forced. The leaders of the group tell them that it's God's will for them to be together. Birth control is heavily stigmatized, but not outright banned. If you use it, you're basically saying you don't trust God's plan for your life. Abortion isn't allowed in any circumstance. Here's the thing. Normally I wouldn't bother with this cult because they seem to have died out a couple decades ago, but I've had multiple requests for it. It turns out they didn't die out after all. They just went underground. They're alive and well, even to this day. I have some statistics here, but they're self-reported, so they should be taken with a grain of salt. There's no telling if it's accurate, but I'd say it'll at least get us in the range. According to the group, in 1972 there were 130 communes, or colonies as they call them, in 15 countries. In 1993 they had about 10,000 members, 7,000 of which were under 18. In 2000, they said there were about 26,000 members, and in 2005, they said they had 32,000 members. Like I said, these numbers are self-reported, so there's no telling what their real numbers are. Groups like this have a tendency to exaggerate their membership. But in this case, this group seems to be trying to appear low-key, so it wouldn't surprise me if they'd underestimated their own numbers. For context, there are around 210,000 Quakers in the world, around 100,000 Christian Scientists, about 8.4 million Jehovah's Witnesses, and around 15 million Mormons. So that should give you a rough idea of how they compare to sizes of other cults. Anyways, they have some very messed up beliefs and practices, and they need to be called out. I can't just let this go. It's crooked, and it's damaged people physically, mentally, and emotionally. So I'm shining a spotlight on them. Maybe raising awareness will help the victims of their f***ed up practices. Anyways, that's all I've got for you. Follow me on Discord, Patreon, and all social media. Check out my science channel. I just released a video on neural nets. Pretty interesting stuff. Check out my podcast too. It's on YouTube and iTunes. And check out the secret link of the day in the description. It's a random YouTuber who I feel deserves a little more exposure. Thanks for watching, guys.